Hundreds of prominent Australians have added their support to Indigenous elders' calls to end the Northern Territory intervention. In a speech delivered at Melbourne University yesterday, Indigenous leaders and key figures called for a repeal of the intervention, saying after 10 years of the policy, things have become a lot worse for these communities. Hashela Kumarawansa reports.
Academics, students and Indigenous elders fill this Melbourne University theatre, united by a single government plea.
We want this intervention to be removed, please.
Their calls for justice echoed by prominent figures of Australia's legal landscape.
The Northern Territory intervention law led ultimately to a disempowerment of Aboriginal peoples and a loss of dignity and respect.
The intervention, or the Northern Territory Emergency Response, was the creation of the former Howard Liberal government in response to allegations of child sexual abuse. 10 years ago, police and military were deployed, new governance policies introduced, and welfare payments were quarantined.
It was over a 48-hour weekend, and without consultation at all with the Indigenous communities of the Northern Territory, a new regime was devised for intervention. An extraordinary thing to have done in contemporary Australia.
The statement released by this group of eminent Australians calls for an immediate repeal of the intervention, claiming it to be racist and discriminatory and saying it's time the government demonstrate a proper duty of care for Indigenous people. However, a decade on from living under these policies, there are fears things have gotten worse.
This policy has made virtually all aspects of life in these communities worse than 10 years ago.
The Menzies School of Health report to the Royal Commission into the Protection and Detention of Children in the Northern Territory found that the intervention had not made any positive difference.
And they say the policies have not only stagnated progress, but destroyed it.
The impact that the intervention has done has increased the suicides, which was unheard of when I was growing up.
A decade of damage they believe that could lead to international legal action.
We have been castigated in the halls of the human rights organisations, and what have we the people done? We haven't acted on that.
Hundreds of prominent Australians have signed the statement of support, including Olympic gold medalist Cathy Freeman and human rights lawyer Julian Burnside. Indigenous elders say this is a step in the right direction.
If ever we're going to come closer together and not kind of comply with the Australian government, which is rotten to the core, if we can come together, then it becomes people's power.
But before progress can be made, much wider awareness is needed.
We need to have a national discussion to bring an end to this disgraceful legislation.